After helping thousands of people learn how to tune, I've noticed everybody follows a very similar path. If you've ever felt overwhelmed or frustrated while learning, it's completely normal and part of the process. In this video, I want to walk you through the 8 stages learning to tune so you know what to expect, you can recognize where you are in the process, and so that you don't mistake frustration for failure. It can be a bit of an emotional roller coaster at times, even for those who are experienced. Do you know what the number one struggle that everybody says they have when it comes to tuning is? And this includes beginners, those kind of in the middle, and even advanced and professional tuners. By a landslide, the number one answer to that question is that everybody says they struggle with confidence. So to demonstrate the 8 stages, we'll graph it out, kind of like a dyno chart. Beautiful handwriting. So on the y-axis, we will use confidence. And on the x-axis, we will use time. So here we have high confidence, low confidence, and a short amount of time and a long amount of time / experience. And to be clear, the shape of this chart or graph or whatever you want to call it is typically very similar for trying to learn anything new, but we'll be applying it to tuning directly, obviously. So for the first stage here, we have excitement. So something led you to wanting to learn how to tune yourself. So whether this is a positive thing, like you just thought it would be fun or exciting or interesting, or a negative thing, like you had a bad experience with a tuner and you decided you'd be better off doing it yourself. Everybody, and I mean everybody, always tells me that they're very excited to get started tuning. So I think with excitement comes a decent level of confidence. Nobody's ever really excited to go and suck at something. So usually if you're excited enough to get started, then there's usually some level of confidence that you have that you're going to be good at it or at least have fun at it. So we're going to start with our excitement basically right in the middle here when it comes to confidence. Now, for a lot of people, stages 2 and stages 3 can happen really quickly, almost right on top of each other. But for stage 2, we're actually going to call this one overconfidence. So basically what this overconfidence is, you finally decided to take the leap into learning this new skill, in this case tuning, and your confidence and excitement shot up as a result of it. Basically, you're thinking that it's going to be easier than it is. Maybe you open up your laptop thinking you're just going to plug right into your ECU, start making changes, and everything's going to be fun and super easy or whatever it is that you're thinking. Basically, I always refer to this stage as not knowing enough to know what you don't know. And typically at this point, you're starting to realize that you're actually going to have to source some kind of information, which quickly leads into our next stage here, which we're going to call overwhelm. So you can see our confidence started pretty high and then immediately went significantly higher. And then now we're on the downward trend. So now you're at the point where you're trying to figure out what exactly it is that you need to know next, or you're realizing that there's so many different things to learn, you don't know where to start. Like, do I need to learn the basics of, how EFI works? Do you need to learn how an internal combustion engine works? Do you need to focus on the particular software that you're trying to tune with? Do you need to learn the ins and outs of the platform that you're trying to tune with? It's a little bit easier if you're only trying to tune your own car because you can focus just on what you have. But if you're trying to go down the path of tuning multiple cars for multiple different people, then just the amount of knowledge that you need to bring in, like I said, it just becomes very overwhelming, and you kind of got to pick and choose where to start because you can't learn everything all at once. At least I can anyways. So as you could probably imagine, this overwhelm quickly turns into the next stage, which we call frustration. For a lot of people, this can be like the emotional damage stage because you're just overwhelmed, mad, frustrated. You don't know what to think. And you might even be convincing yourself you're a dumbass and that this isn't for you. It's too hard. Seems like too much work, too much to learn. And before we talk through this, let's throw stage 5 on here real quick, which is persistence. The definition of persistence is the ability to continue working towards a goal despite difficulty, setbacks, or slow progress. So basically between stages 4 and stages 5, you've basically bottomed out on confidence. If you actually look up the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is kind of what this drawing is based off of, is commonly referred to as the valley of doubt or the valley of despair, which sounds super negative and dramatic. It's probably no surprise, but this is kind of the the range where everybody quits. So this is where the excitement temporarily wears off, and it's sort of put your head down and start figuring things out. Again, this is where you have to be persistent. You have to force yourself through it. At this stage, the bulk of your time is typically with your head in a book, figuratively speaking. You're going to be usually doing less hands-on tuning and more just diving in to information and trying to, again, learn all those things that you didn't know that you didn't know. I personally think that the hardest part of this stage is trying to find the balance of studying and learning information versus actually sitting in a car with a laptop connected, making changes. If you spend too much time just consuming information, you're never going to gain any experience. And if you just hammer away on the keyboard without spending time educating yourself, then you typically run around in circles. You don't learn how to ride a bike by reading how to ride a bike. At some point, you actually have to go out and do it. So I think there is a balance. And before you guys murder me in the comments telling me how you figured it all out on your own with trial and error and you never read anything or learned anything, it is possible. And I would bet everything that I own that you're either partially lying or that you would have learned faster if you actually would have done some research. So now the duration of time that you're in this valley of doubt, or whatever you want to call it, is obviously different for everybody depending on what you're working on, how much time you have available to dedicate to this stuff, how fast of a learner you are, how dedicated you are, and a million other variables. And where you source your information plays a huge role as well. So there's tons of free information everywhere online. Obviously, I'm sure the library has books, whatever the case may be. There are tons and tons of paid options as well, which typically speed up the learning curve and tend to give a straighter path. And then there is also the element of working with others who know whatever it is that you want to know. And this probably speeds up the process the most. Not because somebody gives you all of the answers. I mean, I guess that is kind of a part of it, but because you get exposed to all kinds of situations and stuff that you probably wouldn't run into on your own for years and years because you're just not doing enough, volume. But fortunately, not everybody has access to this. Not everyone gets to hang out in a shop all day, every day with a dyno. So it's kind of a problem I've been thinking about for a long time. And I've been working on something to try to give people more access to these types of situations and stuff. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, check the link below. So next is stage 6, which I think is the best stage. And this is where you start having some breakthrough moments and the fun and the excitement start coming back, which is awesome. And I call this stage the understanding stage. So at this point, all it really takes is for you to apply one of the things that you've learned during your education phase and see the result you were looking for this whole thing to become fun again. Typically around this point is when you also realize that tuning isn't completing the entire tune in one revision, like a lot of people lead on to thinking how this works. It's realizing that tuning is never, or at least very rarely ever, completely finished, and that there is almost always stuff that you can continue to tinker with. I think so many guys get discouraged because they think that they need to know how everything works all at once and how to do everything all at once, which just isn't realistic at all. You don't need to know everything. You just really need to know the next thing. So once you figure out one thing, then start working towards figuring out the next thing, and so on and so forth. And then the next thing you know, you've kind of built up a whole bunch of things that work together to the point where you're able to, quote unquote, finish a tune. Obviously, some of these things and some of these steps will be harder to figure out than others, especially if you're trying to learn on something that's, extensively modified or whatever. This whole process is significantly easier if you try to learn on something that is mildly or minimally modified. And especially if you're dealing with stock ECU stuff, sometimes if the car is completely stock and there is nothing that really needs to be adjusted, I almost find that sometimes that makes it a little bit more difficult. Sometimes throwing a little bit of parts on it and needing to kind of do a little bit of problem solving makes it easier for me, but again, everybody learns differently. And there are some factory tunes where there's tons of improvement that can be done without any type of parts on the car, and sometimes that can be super rewarding because the thing still runs like a stock car, but you're able to just increase horsepower, and who doesn't want to do that? So eventually, as you keep figuring this out, comes step 7, which is experience. This is where you figured out a large majority of things that you need and want to know. You've worked through some miscellaneous problems and got those sorted out. And instead of everything that pops up being an entirely new experience, you start to run into things right away where you can say, I've seen this before, and you know exactly what to do, or at least know how to begin the troubleshooting process. So basically, a problem that used to take you 2 weeks to figure out, you can now sort it out in 10 minutes or an hour or whatever. And at this stage, if it's something that you're interested in, you can probably start to tune other people's cars for money, maybe in the evenings or on the weekends, and make some extra money that way. And for most people, it seems like if you're not starting to mess with other people's cars, then you're starting to buy more parts for your car so that you can modify it more, not even necessarily because you want the parts or the power or whatever the case may be. You just know that each time you change something on the car, that you're going to tweak the tune some more. And that's where the fun and the excitement comes from. So from a financial perspective, getting paid to tinker with other people's cars is usually the better option. So the last stage of learning how to tune is confidence. And you can actually flip-flop the names of 7 and 8 if you want, depending on how you want to look at it. But to be clear, even those in the confidence stage are still not confident about certain things. And almost all of the tuners at this stage have a network of other tuners that they, run things by when things come across weird situations, cars kicking their ass, whatever the case may be. I can't tell you how many times I've had tuners that I think are a billion times smarter than me reach out just to see if I've ever seen a particular problem. So perfectly normal. So again, if there's something that the particular person is interested in, this is typically the stage where most are starting to rent shops and buy dynos, and ironically means that you get to start this whole process over again. So the excitement phase, I should start a shop and I should buy a dyno. And then the overconfidence phase of, oh wait, why aren't customers just swarming in? I have to learn how to market. I have to pay taxes. This sucks. And confidence and everything shoots down. You start questioning if you should have done this or not. And basically the learning curve is exactly the same, just a new skill. So basically, if you're frustrated, that's perfectly normal. I'd honestly be more worried if you didn't hit a point of frustration. So just make sure that you keep pushing through and it will get fun again, I promise. And if you want to see if owning a tuning shop is actually as cool as it seems, check out this video here.